Good morning. On behalf of United Way of the National Capital Area and the entire staff, welcome to Project Community Connect. I'm Stephanie Crane, Director of Community Impact and Engagement. United Way of the National Capital Area expanded its annual Project Homeless Connect in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to align with its strategic programmatic direction focused on achieving equity for all of our community members, regardless of race, gender, income, and ability. We're excited to work with our partners and community-based organizations on Project Community Connect's mission to build community, shift mindsets through personal experience and connection, and provide critical responses at no cost to individuals and families in Washington, D.C. and surrounding counties in Maryland and Northern Virginia. In this time of COVID, there is no segment of society that has not been touched by this public health crisis, particularly those households who are struggling to afford basic household necessities, which include childcare, food, housing, transportation, healthcare, and even a basic smartphone plan. In this unprecedented time, and as we all continue to navigate uncertainty, it remains imperative that your United Way provide innovative ways to reach workers and their families throughout the DMV. Today, I'm joined by Amanda Harris, Chief of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness from Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services, Tamika Gauvin, Deputy Director of Prince George's County Department of Housing and Community Development, and DeSaundra Jones, Senior Director, Customer Experience and Stakeholder Engagement at Washington Gas, to bring you Maryland Rental and Utility Assistance panel. We're going to discuss that due to the pandemic, thousands of individuals are behind in their rent because they lost their jobs in the service industry. So to avoid a national tsunami of evictions, the federal government has distributed millions of dollars in rental and utility funds to local jurisdictions. The panelists on the rental and utility panel are well versed on the steps to take to qualify for these federal dollars. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today and to bring you this much needed workshop. And with that, please help me welcome Amanda Harris. Amanda currently serves as the Chief of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness for the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. Prior to joining Montgomery County, she was the Chief Operating Officer for Pathways to Housing DC and helped to advance housing first principles throughout the United States, Canada, and Japan. Her experience ranges from direct services, program management, public administration, and advocacy. She has a master's degree in social work from the University of Michigan and a Master of Public Policy and Philosophy from George Washington. Under her leadership, Montgomery County has reduced overall homelessness by 35%, chronic homelessness by more than 90%, and family homelessness by 65%. Additionally, please help me welcome Tamika Gauvin, the Deputy Director of Prince George's County Department of Housing and Community Development, and she also manages the county's Emergency Rental Assistance Program. She has dedicated her career to improving the quality of life, access to opportunities, and life outcomes, as well as engaging residents and partners to achieve these goals in the community. She has had the privilege to do this work as the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice and the Deputy Director of the Mayor's Office of Performance and Innovation in Baltimore City, and as Public Involvement Manager for the Baltimore Red Line Project. Ms. Gauvin holds a Master's in City Planning from Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a Bachelor's of Arts from the University of Chicago. Also help me welcome DeSaundra Jones, who joined Washington Gas on July 2020 as Director of Customer Experience Operations and most recently assumed the role of Senior Director, Customer Experience and Stakeholder Engagement. In this role, Ms. Jones leads customer care operations, external stakeholder and community engagement, and customer experience functions across Washington Gas. She has the company-wide responsibility for improving experiences along the customer journey as Washington Gas creates a relentless customer-centric mentality across physical and digital channels. A passionate customer service experience professional and change agent, Ms. Jones possesses intensive industry experience with a solid focus on delivering business results by improving service delivery and transforming the customer experience. Her work includes leading strategy development as well as collaborating with rockstar cross-functional teams to introduce new to company functions, technology, and improvements. She leads teams focused on the voice of the customer, customer operations, vendor management, large key account management, customer program management, social media, grassroots community involvement, and continuous process improvement. Prior to joining Washington Gas, DeSaundra was with the Chesapeake Utilities as the first ever director of customer experience, responsible for building out the customer experience functionality enterprise-wide in the areas of customer experience transformation, change management, communications, learning and development, and the voice of the customer. Ms. Jones co-leads the Southern Gas Association's Leadership Management Committee, serves on the board of directors for Maryland DC Utilities Commission, and is an active member of the Customer Experience Professional Association. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Administration, a Master of Science degree in Human Resource Management and Organizational Effectiveness, and an MBA from the University of Maryland. DeSaundra has earned designations as a Certified Project Management Professional and Organizational Change Management Professional. A global speaker and presenter of all things customer, she is eager to share success practices with peers across industries. So we're so excited to have these wonderful panelists with us today. As you listen to our presentations, if you have any questions, please type them in the comments or QA section, and we will answer them at the end of each presentation. Again, thank you so much for being here with us this morning, and welcome.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on this Saturday morning. So I'm going to spend some time talking to you about Montgomery County's COVID rent relief program, and then in addition, some other programs that are available in the event that people do not qualify for the COVID rent relief program. You can go to the next slide, please. Before I begin, I just want to give some context. So Montgomery County recognized very quickly at the beginning of the pandemic that there was going to be a need to support tenants in order for them to be able to stay in their home. So we actually started our first rent relief program, COVID rent relief program, in May of 2020. So we have been doing this for a while now and have distributed over $50 million in rent relief to Montgomery County residents. This current round that I'm going to talk about today is using the federal dollars from the Department of Treasury, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Previously, we had used some local dollars, and we had also dedicated $20 million of our COVID coronavirus relief funds. That was also federal funds. So the COVID rent relief phase 3 is targeted to households that have a COVID-related financial hardship. So an income loss, maybe you lost your job, maybe you contracted COVID and you were out of work for a period of time. Maybe you didn't have childcare and you had to stay home because your kids were doing virtual school. Anything that is related to COVID that caused you a financial hardship would make you eligible. We have decided to target households that are at or below 50% of area median income, although the Treasury does allow us to serve up to 80% AMI. Montgomery County really wanted to ensure that these funds were going to those households most at risk of homelessness. And even though it seems like there's a lot of money and there are millions and millions of dollars available through this program, there was an affordable housing crisis before. And this program it's not an anti-poverty program, and it isn't going to resolve the issue of the severe lack of affordable housing. So we wanted to make sure that we were, in fact, targeting those resources to those most likely to become homeless. So at or below 50% AMI, you must owe at least $1,000 in rent arrears. So if you're just a couple $100 short or $500 short, you would not be eligible for this particular program. And then we also have residency requirements. So you need to have lived in Montgomery County since August 2020 or earlier. The chart below just shows the AMI. So 50% AMI for a household of 4 is around $64,000. Next slide, please. Okay. So as I said, we are really committed to targeting the resources to those most in need. So we actually used local data to create a homeless prevention index. And this index helps us identify specific neighborhoods that are at greatest risk of eviction or homelessness. So we looked at things like the social determinants of health. So looking at neighborhoods with a high proportion of people of color, single parent households, poverty, because the research has showed us that particularly Black or African Americans are overrepresented in the homeless continuum. Um, Female headed households with children of color are the most likely to get evicted. So we're looking at neighborhoods that have a high proportion of those populations. And then also looking at housing stressors, so high turnover rates, high percent of overcrowding, and then also just low income households. And then finally, for the prevention index, we layered on the pandemic impact. So we looked at neighborhoods with high rates of positive COVID-19 cases and also places where there was likely to be job loss related to COVID. So using census data, we know where people are. We know that people who work in hospitality, restaurant industry were likely to have lost their job during the pandemic, and the census data helps us identify where those workers actually live. That's how we created this, and we have, I think it's 21 census tracts that are designated as high need or high impact. So the resources for the COVID rent relief, people that live in those neighborhoods are actually given priority. We also prioritize households that have been unemployed for more than 90 days. This program is available to anyone, regardless of your immigration status. That's not a factor. We also serve households that may not have a formal lease, that are in kind of informal housing. Maybe they're renting a room or they have a roommate, but it's not an official sublease. We are able to serve those households. Even if you did receive funds previously from Montgomery County, you are still eligible to apply again. Next slide, please. This is just the map of those high need census tracts. So if you are living in these high need census tracts, you would be prioritized for assistance. I also should say that we are prioritizing households that have a scheduled eviction or have a court notice, because it's really important that we stay ahead of it and make sure that we're getting assistance to renters before they actually get evicted. And beginning in July of this year, we were able to establish a data sharing agreement with our sheriff's office. So every week, our department gets a list of households that are scheduled for eviction. And then we take that list, and anyone that has applied for assistance, we pull that application for quick processing. Any household that has not actually applied but is scheduled for an eviction, we share that information with our nonprofit partners that are providing housing counseling, and they actually go out and knock on doors and try to get people to apply for assistance. So if you do have a scheduled eviction and you have not applied, don't be surprised if someone comes knocking. We are absolutely there to help. We want to make sure that we can get you the much needed assistance and keep you in your home. Next slide, please. So this is a federal program, so it does require some documentation. We have done our best to try and minimize that while still adhering to the federal guidelines. So we do ask that you provide some sort of proof or documentation of your COVID financial hardship. That can come in a number of different forms, and we will take self-attestation. So you can just simply write a letter, sign it, and send it to us explaining your financial hardship. We do ask for proof of income for either the last 30 days or your 2020 tax return. So we look at income in a variety of different ways to try and make a household eligible. So let's say you were at 60% AMI at the beginning of the pandemic, you lost your job, you were out of work for 6 months and have now got a job again, and your current income may be above that 50% AMI threshold, but if we look at the last year, you would likely be eligible. So if you're not sure, we definitely encourage people to apply. We do ask for a rent ledger, some sort of documentation that you have debt, rental debt. We ask for a photo ID. It does not have to be a government issued photo ID. It can be a work badge. It can be an expired passport, just something with your name and your photo, your lease. And then we ask about the people in your household, who's in your household. And that's to ensure that we're not duplicating benefits, and that we're getting you as much assistance as you may be eligible for. And then also a proof of residency. Next slide, please. Oh, this one is, this one's a lot on this slide. So basically, this is just explaining the types of documentation that we accept. We're pretty flexible for residency, just anything that has your address and your name on it that has a date. So it could be a utility bill, a bank statement, any other kind of something that confirms your address. For income, we do allow self-attestation for income. So if you don't have an income statement or you have no income, we have a form on our website that just allows you to self-certify that you don't have any income, or this is your current income if you're maybe working under the table. Rent confirmation. So we do need to have something that shows this is how much your rent is and this is how much you owe. And then for the landlord piece, we do ask that the landlords that are going to be receiving funds actually register in our county system so that we can send the check directly to the landlord. It is not a requirement. Even if your landlord chooses not to participate in the program, we can still provide assistance directly to the tenant so that they can pay rent. Next slide, please. So what you need to know. So we cap assistance for households that are above 30% AMI at $12,000. So the $12,000 is the max benefit that you can receive if you're at 31 to 50% AMI. If you had received previous assistance from us, we would reduce that from the 12,000. So if you got $4,000 in an earlier phase, your benefit for phase 3 would be $8,000. The award is based on the amount owed and the monthly rent responsibility. And most situations, as I just said, the money is paid directly to the landlord. And then there was some confusion early on. We had a wait list after the phase 2 ended. Anyone who was on that wait list still needs to actually apply for phase 3. We don't have any way of getting your information from that wait list. You do need to actually apply again. I will also say that if you are a household that has no income or extremely low income at or below 30% AMI, we do, there's no cap on the amount of assistance, so we can actually pay more. There are some limitations with the Treasury funds. We cannot pay more than 12 months of arrears. So that is the cap. But most people are coming in with 5 to 6 months of arrears. And so we not only pay the arrears, but we also pay 3 months of future rent or prospective rent. So we're trying to get households set up so they're not having to keep coming back for additional assistance. Next slide, please. There is an online application. It is a 2-step process. The first part is just kind of a pre-screening. That's if you just complete that part, you're not finished. You do actually have to complete the full application. When you complete that application online, even if you don't have your documents ready, you can still apply and the application will still go through. And then a caseworker will be assigned and will connect with you to collect the rest of the documentation. The application does require an email address. It doesn't have to be unique to the applicant. So if you have someone that's maybe helping you, like a social worker or a property manager, you can use their email. The application is available in 7 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, French, and Amharic. So we try to make this program really accessible. In the event that a household has some literacy issues or some other language barriers or technology barriers, and they cannot complete an online application, they can call our 311 and someone will help them apply. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have 4 housing counseling agencies that are able to assist people with their application as well. Next slide, please. So just a brief summary, the application portal is available. There's the web address. And again, those eligibility requirements, COVID financial hardship, at or below 50% AMI, and owe at least $1,000 and have lived in Montgomery County since August 2020. We do absolutely have funds available, so it's not too late. If you have not applied, please do so. Even if you're not quite sure that you would be eligible, please go ahead and apply. Next slide, please. So we also have a number of other programs. So if you feel like you may not be eligible for the COVID rent relief, like maybe your income loss was not related to COVID or some other reason, we do have other programs, our existing programs that can provide assistance. Our housing stabilization services, we do help with rent arrears. We also help with utilities. We can help with first month's rent and security deposit if you choose to relocate. So we encourage people to call 311 and see what they might be eligible for. We have a homeless diversion program. So that is for households that are at imminent risk of homelessness, formal or informal leases. We can provide some financial assistance to try and keep you in your current place. Next slide, please. And our other programs, so we do offer burial assistance through our housing stabilization services. It's around $650. It's paid directly to the funeral home. We have our Office of Home Energy programs and also through housing stabilization for utility assistance that can pay through the state program that can pay both a monthly subsidy for your utilities and also help with arrears. And as I mentioned before, we do offer assistance for moving and storage costs in the event that you are evicted, and then we can help you relocate. Okay, I think that's it. Just additional supports. We have a lot of supports in Montgomery County. Food support, call 311. COVID testing, we're still doing that. Utilities, there's a number there. And burial assistance. For most things, I would just encourage everyone to just call 311. They will help direct you to the right place. If you're not sure if you qualify, I would encourage you to just apply. You can also call 311. They may or may not be able to tell you if you are eligible, so better to just apply and we can sort that out. Okay. I think that's it. And I'm happy to take any additional questions or can wait for questions at the end.
Sure. No, thank you so much, Amanda. That was really informative and helpful. So a couple of questions. If you're not sure you qualify, I heard you say sort of apply. Should someone call 311 and talk to anyone about sort of where they are in the process, or is it better to just go ahead and put in an application?
It's better to just go in and put an application. We're getting a lot of calls through 311, and they may or may not be able to tell you. They don't have the intimate knowledge of the program. They have just kind of a general sense. So better to apply. The other thing I will say for tenants who have already applied, I should have said this earlier, but I'll take the opportunity now. I know that it is painfully slow, and we certainly recognize that there are households that applied many months ago that have not received rental assistance yet. That is in part because just the volume and the capacity, but also because we are prioritizing those households with eviction notices in those high-need census tracts. But the important message to tenants is you can check your status online. So you can check your application status. And as long as it does not say denied, you are still in the queue and we will absolutely get to you. In the event that your status changes, like your landlord does in fact file for eviction and you have a court notice, you can call 311 or you can email us at hss@montgomerycountymd.gov and let us know that you have a court notice now, and we can pull your application and process that faster.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. The only other question we had was if someone is unbanked or underbanked, how would they access the services that are not the COVID relief services, the ones that aren't necessarily going directly to the landlord? Do you have to have a bank account or something to access those? Okay.
No, you do not. We can print checks on demand. So you can just come to the office and pick up your check and take it and cash it wherever you would cash it. Or we can also print the check, have it made out directly to the landlord, and you can hand deliver it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amanda. And thank you so much for your presentation. This was amazing and helpful. And we'll have time for more questions at the end of all three presentations. Now we're going to turn it over to Tamika Gauvin, and she's going to share her presentation. Thanks, Tamika. Welcome. You're muted, Tamika.
I knew I was going to do that. But thank you for having me here, Stephanie, and good morning to everyone. And I'm going to speak to you about the Emergency Rental Assistance Program for Prince George's County, and you'll hear me refer to it as ERAP or ERAP during the course of the presentation. Next slide, please. So just the areas I'll cover is just a quick funding overview, our eligibility and requirements, our framework, and just some takeaways as we think through and always we're thinking about how to make this program better. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we received three buckets of funding for ERAP. And I do want to say, similar to Montgomery County, we had a previous iteration of emergency rental assistance related to the COVID relief effort. And but these three buckets, this is the biggest largest funding that we've received. And so we received $27.1 million from Treasury, directly from Treasury. Treasury also gave money to states, and states gave distributed pots of money as well. So we received $27 million from the state of Maryland. And then Treasury did a second, distributed a second round of funding, and we received $30.5 million in that round. We've been running the program since March 4th, and again, DHCD runs the program on for Prince George's County. Next slide, please. And our eligibility and requirements. So very similar to Montgomery County, we require a lease or a landlord attestation if there is not a current lease available. Maybe the tenant is month to month. We also require that the household is not above 80% of area median income. And I just saw a little typo there. So we fund all the way up to 80% area median income. In Prince George's County, a household of, let's say, 4 at 80% of area median income is $82,300. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like in Prince George's County. The household has to be housing and stable. And so for us, that means that they're past due in rent, they're past due in utilities, or there's some sort of notice of failure to pay. And then there's a hardship that is either due or during COVID. And so those are the 4 criteria that we're looking at. And that's based on Treasury guidelines. Next slide, please. And so this gives a little bit more detail on our requirements. I mentioned that we fund households up to 80% of area median income. We do also have prioritization in our process, and we prioritize households that are 50% of area median income. Similar to Montgomery County, we also did looked at some factors like overcrowdedness and likelihood to lose employment during COVID, susceptibility to COVID-19, and looked at these and mapped it out based on census tracts. And we also have a very colorful map of how this plays out in the county. And we had priority levels of 1 to 5, with 1 being the most at risk. And we use that to prioritize mainly our landlord applications. Our tenant applications are first come, first serve. Landlord and tenants can apply for our program, and we pay up to 18 months of arrearages for rent and utilities. So as long as the arrearages do not go past April 2020. Similar to Montgomery County, we require similar documents. We need to verify household income. We have a few types of documents that we could use based on calendar year 2020 income or monthly income in 2021. We have an attestation form for hardship. We look for the lease or the landlord attestation if there isn't a current lease. And we look for the rental ledger. And Treasury has made this very flexible. So there are ways to get around some of these needs just by using self-certification or attestation. We use that term a lot to self-certify. So for instance, with income, if a tenant is in a cash economy, so they're not being paid with a check, if there are documents that are not available, we can use self-attestation or self-certification. So Treasury has really made it possible so that households can screen in instead of screening out. Another thing that's very important is the agreement that landlords sign when to receive funding. So we prefer and aim to pay landlords, to get that funding directly to landlords and make sure that that arrearage is taken care of. But we can pivot and pay the tenant directly if landlords do not want to participate or they're unresponsive. But if the landlord is participating in the program, the landlord has to agree that that there will not be any legal action, any self-help measures to remove the tenant from the property for 90 days after receiving the payment. Next slide, please. A little bit about our framework. So landlords and tenants can apply through our portal, which is web-based. We also have, and we've added this recently with the help of our Office of Community Relations, intake specialists. So we have individuals who can help tenants and landlords provide the documentation. We can look through the documentation, let them know if it's right to complete the application. And even before we added our intake specialist, I'm going to jump down to our partners icon. Our community partners provided intake for us. So we work with a number of partners to help tenants with applying to the program. So we had intake through that function. We have reviewers. There are 2 tiers of review. There's the initial review that's usually the most significant, most time-consuming review for the process. And then we have our quality control that does the spot check and makes sure that the application is in order. We have our hotline, and the banner for the hotline was up just a few seconds ago. And again, that was another recent addition through our Office of Community Relations. And it was a wonderful addition because communication early on, we saw that where we needed to enhance our program, it was with communication and getting having that line of communication for questions, and tenants and landlords are stressed. They want information, and that was one place where we knew we really were having some trouble, and we're so thankful that now we have a hotline. I spoke a little bit about our partners. We have partners that help us do more than intake. I'll talk a little bit about that, and outreach and communication. So just getting out there, having presentations. Our Office of Community Relations is going on site to properties, and we're very specific about how we go to properties. But doing that to make sure that we are connecting. We connect with landlords through presentations and webinars, and so that's. I want to say a couple more things about our outreach. Using mobile ads, bus ads, just getting the word out through different forums and different mediums. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about our partners. We are working with the Office of Community Relations. I mentioned them a couple of times now. And again, they have really added capacity to our team, and by giving us intake specialists, also giving us the hotline and adding reviewers as well. We work with Prince George's County or the Office of the Sheriff. And we're similar to Montgomery County, receiving information on the evictions. I didn't talk about prioritization based on that, but we do prioritize applications and expedite them if they are on the sheriff's list for eviction. So we know that there's definitely going to be a knock on the door and a tenant removed from the property. And so we look to see if we have an application, we expedite it. And similar to Montgomery County, if there is not an application, do outreach to get to the tenant. We work with Community Legal Services, a great resource at the court, and provides for us that legal perspective. And we work with them, sharing information with them about payments, and they help us with knowing who's going to be in the court. They are going to the courts, or they're in the court every day, except Wednesdays in Prince George's County, and they're assisting tenants with their cases. And so usually the best outcome is for us to get more time so that we can expedite or prepare that application, review the application, and they've been very helpful in doing that. The next set of icons on this slide are our community partners, and they provided intake for us very early on site. They have expanded and will be reviewing for us. So our reviewer pool is going to expand with their assistance. And so that's another exciting thing that we've done to increase our capacity. So we rely heavily on these community partners. And there are some that I might not have even put on this slide, and I'm remiss to add them, but we're definitely working with a number of partners. I want to say that it's great today to be on a panel with two people that I've talked to before coming into the panel. Met with DeSaundra Jones, who's after me, met with Amanda Harris. And so there's lots of communication with agencies and jurisdictions that are also running this program, and with partners and potential partners like Washington Gas to meet the needs of these households. Next slide, please. And just a few program takeaways. So right now we have assisted 4,434 households in counting, and that means that we have expended about 33.8 million of that, about $84 million that we've received in these three buckets that I talked about at the top of the presentation. I talked about prioritization. I talked about how we have done mapping similar to Montgomery County to understand where the need is and to prioritize applications. We see consistently we're at about 60% of our households are below 30% of area median income. So we're targeting the households that are most in need, and about 30% We serve about 30% of the households that are in a 30 to 50% area median income bracket. Still, we have many applications, and we saw an increase in applications after the CDC and state moratoriums ended in July. Between June and July and August, there was this movement of ending these moratoriums, and as expected, tenants became panicked. Landlords become more stressed, and we saw an uptick in the applications that were submitted. So next slide, please. Some program challenges. So just the sheer volume of the applications and the resource, the capacity, the bodies to process them. And so we've been adding reviewers, increasing capacity, and been doing this aggressively in the past couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And so that's something that we're tackling. And with the end of the moratoriums, I mentioned that in a previous slide, that made increase the number of applications and really put that strain on getting these processed as quickly as possible. It was a safety net when they were in place. And just the resources needed to manage the program, not only the people resources, but this is a program that is multidisciplinary, I would say, in that we really need partners. You really need partners. We hold a meeting every 2 weeks, an eviction prevention coordination meeting, and we're growing that meeting and who's at the table because it goes beyond this application. It goes beyond the eligibility. Amanda mentioned this, I mentioned this. There's the knock on the doors when we know that there's an eviction happening. There are partners at the courts. And so there's a lot that goes, a lot of moving pieces. There are elected officials who support this. So there are many people who need it to make this work. But like I said, many opportunities, or I didn't say it yet, many opportunities. Treasury has really made this a program for screening in. And so we are using tools that Treasury has given us. So the attestation, as we talk, we call up other jurisdictions. We're learning every day how jurisdictions are using the attestation forms and really being able to work to screen people in with attestation, for instance. So Treasury has provided us the opportunity to do that and to this is a program that does not require identification. You do not have to prove your citizenship. So just things that are knocking down the barriers for the program. Another thing I'll mention under the Treasury bucket is they allow us to use things like categorical inclusions or categorical eligibility. So if someone is receiving some kind of assistance from another federally funded program, and they had to go through an income eligibility process, determination process, we could use that to qualify someone in the income. We could also use census tracts to, in the average income in those income census tracts to qualify properties in these certain census tracts. So there are many tools that are made or provided to us to decrease the barriers. Partner coordination, I mentioned that it's more than the application and getting that payment, is getting the partners involved to connect these dots, and just the growing body of knowledge. Again, mentioning that I talked to the panelists before today, and just constantly learning how we could improve the process. And so just want to mention one thing. I didn't talk about language. So our materials are available in language. And if individuals needed more assistance, they could mention that when they contact our hotline. The hotline was made available. And I think that's the last slide. Next slide, please. And here I included our website, our email boxes, and you also have our hotline if you have any questions. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamika. And you covered the question. You were a mind reader. The question that came was specifically around if English was not my first language, are there translation services? So this is wonderful to know. And thank you so much for your presentation. Again, we're going to leave a little time at the end for additional questions, but thank you so much. This was excellent. I'm going to now turn it over to DeSaundra to begin her presentation. DeSaundra, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This has been extremely informative. So much great information has been provided this morning. And I am just going to take a few more moments of your time and talk about Washington Gas and our Washington Gas Cares program. I think both of my peer panelists have mentioned the word partnership. And, at Washington Gas, that is, core to what we do. And so we have collaborated with United Way and certainly the other folks on this panel with me today to not just look at how we can support, the community and our neighbors from essential energy perspective, but the entire person. So, we've talked about, or you've heard about this morning already, rental assistance, and I'll just take a few moments of your time to talk about utility assistance. Next slide, please. The Washington Gas Cares program is a collaboration or coordination of several different energy assistance or support programs within the organization. And so we've packaged them up and put them in easy to find places so you're not scrambling on our website or looking for the information in disparate places. Next slide, please. So the first one I'll talk about is the Washington Area Fuel Fund. And actually, I think what I'll say first, before I start talking about our programs, is that as you are thinking about what you need to do from an assistance perspective, I think I should note that for Washington Gas at this time, there are no, we've suspended disconnections. So we're not disconnecting any residential or any commercial customers, nor are we assessing late fees. And so that gives a little bit of comfort and a little bit of relief as you're working through, some other areas that might need some attention. So again, we're not doing any disconnections at this time of any customers with arrears. As I talk about, handling those arrears, the Washington Area Fuel Fund is a program, one of our foundational programs that we run in coordination with the Salvation Army. It's been in place since about 1983. And since then, we've helped about 300,000 customers. And on an annual basis, it's somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000. What's interesting or what's key to note is that this assistance is regardless of your fuel type. So certainly you can use this to take care of your natural gas bill, but any utility or any fuel type is eligible. Any payment that's made, 100% of the donations that we receive go to our local families and our neighbors. So we receive these donations through several different methods, through customers that want to assist, through local partners, and every dollar goes to help families. The program runs January 1st through May 31st, and the families can receive up to $600. And the eligibility is very similar, if not extremely similar to LIHEAP, in that it's based on two things: the number of people in the household and the annual gross income. And I think you've heard that talked about a little bit here today. Next slide, please. The next program that we have in place is the Gift of Warmth. And this program allows our customers to be the source of support for each other. So if there is a customer in need that you are aware of and you want to provide the gift of warmth, either by providing a small payment or a total payment on the account, you can simply give us a call and we'll apply that payment on your behalf, either anonymously or by name. We'll let the customer who's received the gift know that they have received one, and also send you a thank you. Next slide, please. I mentioned early at the start of the conversation that we have suspended all residential and commercial as well disconnections, and there are no assessments of late fees at this time. If you do need to talk about payment arrangements, what we're offering right now is 12 months. There's no down payment and no security deposit, nor are there any questions asked. So an immediate 12-month payment arrangement is available. For our customers who may be a little bit more vulnerable and are approved LIHEAP participants, you are eligible for payment arrangements, again, with no questions asked, up to 24 months. To request that payment arrangement, simply go online to washingtongas.com. You can certainly contact us at 844-WASH-GAS and select payment arrangements in the voice response system, or you can talk to a representative. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about what we can do to take care of the arrears or the past due payments on the account. To set the account up for success going forward, we suggest budget billing, and certainly two things. So budget billing is a 12-month program. It really takes the average of your monthly bill and spreads it across the winter heating season. And then the other part that I'll mention as it relates to budget billing is through Maryland Energy Assistance, there's a program called USPP. It's very similar to budget billing in that it will take your past due payments as well as your current payments, and it spreads those out. So that USPP program is through LIHEAP, or the Maryland Energy Assistance Fund, and budget billing is through Washington Gas. So both of those are available, and certainly we suggest customers take advantage. You can always set your account up on an automated payment plan, and enrollment in either one of these programs will waive any deposits on your account. Next slide, please. So when you're talking about, thank you, when you're talking about winterization, and it's certainly getting a little chilly outside, the other thing that we say is to just do a couple of things around the house, and this will help with energy efficiency. Certainly, keeping your heater or your water heater or your heat at 120 below. We suggest, to the extent you can, washing clothes in cold water. And then, doing creating loads of laundry or dishwashing, at most opportune times, and doing it in segments rather than throughout the day. I couldn't get that out for some reason. All right, next slide, please. You can also do an energy efficiency home profile. So you can go to our website, you can fill out a survey of sorts, let us know, what you have in your home, let us know the types of appliances, et cetera. And what our energy efficiency department will do is take a look at what you have and potentially send out an energy efficiency toolkit. And so that toolkit helps by providing winterization tools, such as weather stripping, things for your windows, just things that will help to keep the warmth in and keep the costs at a minimum. So I certainly suggest going online, and all of this can be found at washingtongascares.com. Next slide, please. I think that might be. So this slide just has, certainly, if there's something that I didn't cover, a specific question that you have specific to your account, you can always contact me directly. The website overall for Washington Gas is there, as well as our washingtongascares.com website that has everything we discussed today, as well as a little bit more detail, and our phone number. Thank you again for having me, and thank you for indulging me for those few moments.
Thank you so much, DeSaundra. So much good information in here. Similar question for Tamika was around, again, language services. If someone does need assistance with language services, is that a possibility? Is that on the website or is that through the hotline? What would
Sure. So every offering that we have, every channel that we have is in multiple languages. So certainly if you go to our website and you need to see the information in a different language, Spanish or something of the like, you just click that language and everything switches over for you. Everything that we send out, we send in multiple languages. And certainly if you are calling our 844 Wash Gas and you're in need of a different language or translation, we can take care of that as well. So absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, now we're going to bring all of our panelists back together and just open it up for additional questions. Gabrielle, I'm not sure if additional questions have come in. If not, I'm sure I have questions, so I'm happy to ask. Well, one, I just want to say thank you all so much. I feel like all the services have so many options and opportunities and levels of support, and I feel like that's really important. What would you say you all are hearing are some of, and I think some of you mentioned sort of timeline for getting services, or if you put in an application, maybe the time it takes for an application to kind of move over. What are other barriers maybe you've heard from folks? Is it just around timing, or it sounds like you have so many opportunities for ability for help. Is there anything else that you would just recommend as helpful hints as folks are navigating the system?
I will take a stab at that. I think that with what we've seen is documentation, quality of documentation. And so for us, there's the application process, the review is prolonged, and it's definitely some backlog, right? There's definitely that hiccup. So I'm not saying that it's all about the documentation, but we do find that we have to go back and get documentation. It's not quite what we've asked for, and so that is very important, and that we do get very clean applications the first time. And so that's one thing that pops up to mind very quickly.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I think in Montgomery County, certainly documentation can be a challenge. I think the other piece is just being able to get in touch with tenants because they may have applied many months ago and trying to reach them. And then related to that is we are finding that unfortunately a lot of people are just self-evicting. They feel like it's been too long. I don't think this is ever going to happen. And they just choose to relocate or move to a different situation. And so, we'd strongly encourage people to stay in their unit. They do have legal rights to that. And then also in the event that they have moved or they're doubled up somewhere and they need help finding a new place, that we can absolutely do relocation assistance where we would pay first month's rent, security deposit, and 3 months of prospective. So, but that's definitely a challenge. If people it feels like a lottery, even though it isn't a lottery because of the slowness. So,
and I would just add to that once they leave the property, there are scenarios that we could work with, but by and large, we do not pay for arrearages once the tenant leaves. So we want tenants to stay in place. And as Amanda said, they have a legal right. And so I think also the notices that they receive, we've tried to do the send out notification about what does this notice of intent to file mean? What does this notice to vacate mean? There was a law passed on October 1st that required landlords to give a 10-day notice of the intent to file for failure to pay. That caused panic. And so we were getting calls, I'm about to be evicted in 10 days. And so we had to, start communicating that no, there's a legal process. Yep. And you should be staying in your property.
Thank you. These are just amazing. Again, everything in the presentations was so robust and helpful. These are just amazing additional tips, and we'll make sure that everyone has your contact information, knows how to access the hotlines, the websites, all of the supports that are in place. If there's any additional questions or any final remarks from our panelists, I'd like to give you a little bit of time before we close. We have about a minute or so left. So would love to just open that. And if questions come in after, we will definitely reach out and make sure we get those questions answered. But I just want to thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing these tremendous resources, and thank you for all that you're doing to support our community. It's wonderful and tremendous, and we greatly appreciate it. Okay, I'll give it like another few seconds, and if any last minute questions come in, if not, we will make sure we email any questions that come in after.
Perfect.
Thank you.